Dear red sky at morning, don't shorten your letters. You ask if I've been lonely. I hardly know how to answer. I have observed friendship as one observes high holy days, breathtakingly short, whirlwinds of intimate endeavor, frenzied carousing, the sharing of food, of wine, of honey, compressed always and gone as soon as they come. It is often my duty to fall in love with convincingly, and certainly I've received no complaints. But that is work, and there are better things of which to write. You say you were 13. You do not. You seem so young to me still, however long ago that may seem like it was to you. My own folk are great gardeners. Our games are long and slow, and our maturation also. Garden seeds the best with us. Your commandant knows this already, whether or not it's considered need to know for you, and we learn from and grow into its threads. We treat the past as trellis, coax our vineyard though and around, and harvest is not a word for swiftness. The future harvests us, stomps us into wine, pours us back into the root system in loving libation, and we grow stronger and more potent together. I have been birds and branches, I have been bees and wolves, I have been ether flooding the void between stars, tangling their breath into network of song. I have been fish and plankton and hummus, and all these have been me. But while I've been enmeshed in this wholeness, they are not the whole of me. The thought of your disembodied network repulses me, but I look at you, Red, and see much of myself, and desire to be apart sometimes, to understand who I am without the rest, and what I return to, the me-ness that I know is sure, inescapable self, is hunger, desire, longing, this longing to possess, to become, to break like a wave on a rock and reform, and break again, and wash away. This is a necessary part of any ecosystem, but it unsettles others with inability to be satisfied. It is difficult, it is very difficult to befriend where you fish to consume, to find those who, when they ask, "Do I have you still?" they end a letter with yours, mean it in any substantive way. So I go, I travel further and faster and harder than most, and I read, and I write, and I love cities. To be alone in a crowd, apart and belonging, to have distance between what I see and what I am. I am glad to know you love reading. Perhaps you should next write from a library. There's so much I want to recommend. Best, Blue. Postscriptum. Socrates. I wonder if you knew any of the same ones. Postscriptum. I kept nodding your name at night, but the salutation seemed wiser. I've learned to take warning from delight. Postscriptum. Of course, we're still going to win. Lou is in a high place at night. Wind blows, the air is cold, but she is not. Sharp rocks don't hurt her feet. Her job is to guard a growing thing, millennia in the making, a seed planted in the banked embers of the planet's heart that's ribbed in slate surface with something like vines, sap, blood, just beneath the surface, just waiting. It will bloom soon. Blue has faded from time to time, as required. She has always known its purpose, a lion in waiting, a planet-sized trap to spring, seeds planted long before prohibitive treaties about down-thread interference. Blue is to watch it hatch, accomplish its purpose, then destroy its root system and leave no trace to be found or used by the other side. Garden has learned with the slow patience of green things how to prune enemy agents from the timeline, releasing ladybirds to their aphids, dragonflies to their mosquito larvae. Blue is still thinking of larvae when she sees red. Time stops. Blue carries nothing with her between strands except knowledge, purpose, tactics, and red's letters. Memory is tipped and decanted into garden, life to life to life, always deepening, thickening, growing new roots and efficiencies. But red's letters she keeps in her own body, curled beneath her tongue like coins, printed in her fingertips, between the lines of her palms. She presses them against her teeth before kissing her marks, reads them over when she shifts her grip on motorcycle handles, dusts soldiers' chins with them in bar fights and barracks games. She thinks without thinking, often, of what she will name red in her next letter, hides her list in plausibly deniable dreamscapes, on the undersides of milkweed leaves, in shad chrysalis and wingtip, vermilion lye, scarlet tagener, Perthian thread, my red rose. She looks at red, 13, alone, vulnerable, so impossibly fragile and small, and letter rises in her throat like bile. I want it to be seen. She sees her and breaks like a wave. She does not run the scenarios. She does not think, did Garden send me here to test me? Does Garden know? Does Garden want me to watch her die? She thinks nothing of the roots dance and twitch, as the planet blooms a mouth, a face, a body, a vastness rearing silent as owl flight in the perfect dark, a hunger with eyes and teeth, bred for silent waiting years to send one specific set of nanoscopic implants, to hatch and devour one bright red element of its surroundings. It looks like a little lion, truth be told, mane of pale blue cilia, maw, worthy of cinematic roars, though it will never make a sound. But for the size, the number of legs, the wings, it steps out into the cold, sharp ground. It sniffs the air, inclines its head in red's direction. Blue tears out its throat. Her teeth are very sharp. She has 4 rows of them. Her double-banked eyes see beautifully in the dark. Her 6 legs end in tearing points, rip the voiceless creature into hot, bulging meat. It gets its own in. Good for the story she'll have to tell, she'll later think. When she can recover, though. When she can act again from something besides pure, obliterating need, and she bleeds in her wolf shape but makes no sound, nothing to distract Red from the absence of epiphany. The hollowing that left the space for another, the moment when she became Blue's. Blue eats the carcass, all but its teeth and venom sac, that she tears carefully open on the rocks, dips a few drops in the hole it grew out of. The roots will lap it up, wither, and die. Her story will be that the creature had soured, attacked her instead of its quarry. Enemy action, no doubt. Having discovered the root system, made changes to it somewhere up thread. An understandable but embarrassing mistake, left Blue to injured to attempt her own correction, and at any rate, there were the treaties, direct confrontation between agents so precariously down-thread would be catastrophic for ambient chaos levels. The words fall into place like rain. Blue licks her bloodied snout, her paws, her gouged shoulder. She needs to do one more thing. Slowly, keeping her wound out of sight, she walks where Red can see her. Keeping her distance, of course, and the words padded past in some dimness of mind. She does not look wounded, she is certain. She looks at Red and sees tears on her face. She stifles the urge to run, towards or away. She carries her hunger like a compass rose. Stars rose, they are a rose, right? Walks 2 thous away from the north to which it points. Once she is out of sight, she tucks into a shallow cave and collapses, trembling, shifts her shape to human, finds her legs, her skin. The wound yawning, larger and uglier than before, likely infected, needing care. She leans her back against the scalloped stone wall, closes her eyes, spreads her palms on the ground for extra support. She puts one hand on a letter to do Miss Leavitt proud, beautiful blue paper flecked with lavender buds and thistle petals. In a blue envelope with a red dollop of wax shutting it. There is no seal, no stamp, only red. Red as the blood dripping from the shoulder. She stares at it. Then she laughs, hollow and bare, and she sobs, and she clutches the letter against the heart and does not open it for a long time. But she does. She reads it. Fever builds, sweat beads on her brow, but she reads it and reads it again and again and again. Much later, the seeker comes. She finds the gothic creature's teeth. She plucks the 2 largest canines, fixes them into her mouth, and moves towards the cave. There is nothing for her to find except the blood. Dear Blue, I don't know what to say. Even perspicacious, almost persistent, Mr. Leavitt lacks a model. Birthdays? Yes. It's mine, by the way, to the extent I have one. Funerals? Fine. On the occasion of a marriage, naturally, but she somehow neglects to frame a form for when your enemy saves. Shit. I'm sorry. I can't keep up the joke, and it's wrong to call you enemy. Thank you. For saving me, obviously, and for starters, I felt you climb down the braid. I am more sensitive to your footsteps, I think, than anyone alive, and everyone is alive somewhere in time. Even these digressions feel weak. I like them usually, my jokes. They feel like tacking in, not out, to the matter at hand. Less so now. I followed you. I apologize for that, for trespassing on your privacy as you made yourself what you had to be to win. I could not have beaten the beast alone. You're more ferocious than I am. Do you look around and turn as you read these lines, seeking me? I'm gone, dear Blue, up thread, and you should be as well. We're neither of us safe here, and the longer you remain, the less safe we become. You know the drill. Tremors spread from the traveler's foot and through the other. Spider has grown and attuned to your thread as I have. The others aren't deaf. I'll have to see your eyes some other time. I leave you a letter sealed in wax, a trace of perfume. Send for me is a medium. I rarely use it for ornamental purpose. I hope I've selected a fragrance to your taste. I asked the busboy in London next for a sample of your tea and new letters back. Brought it to a perfumer in Phnom Penh, Strand 7922 C33, if you happen to like the smell. I'll enclose the address below. Worked back and forth for a few years on the proper mix. Anyway, keep this. It's yours. It won't burn when you read the signature. It won't decay faster than any letter one woman in your beloved Strand 6 C19 would write to another. The paper's from Wuhan, Song Dynasty, handmade. Leave it in a damp place and it will rot. Mix it in water and you'll have a bulb. Destroy it on your own, in your own way, if you want. I won't mind. We all have our observers, and this letter is a knife at my neck. If cutting's what you want. It's so hard to move here and reply to your last letter. I feel I can't say precisely what. I'm shaken. You know the edges of old maps that promise monsters and mermaids? Here, there be dragons. I do not know what roads lead forward, but your letter hungers for reply. I've read your last missive and reread it in memory as you warned me I would so long ago, preparing myself for a fall. I see you as a wave, as a bird, as a wolf, my wolf with the 6 legs and double-banked eyes. I try not to think of you the same way twice. Thinking builds patterns in the brain, and those patterns can be read by one sufficiently determined, and commandant, sometimes, is sufficiently determined. I think you'd like her, so I change your shape in my thoughts. It's amazing how much blue there is in the world, if you look. You're different colors of flame. Bismuth burns blue, and cerium, germanium, and arsenic. See? I bore you into things. I suspect you see me in plain by now, imagining me shifting, uncomfortable, and exposed. My way was always the straightforward push, in one direction, without hesitation or restraint. I only worried you might view these long letters as a sign for a simple or a desperate mind. I worried maybe you'll laugh. And you responded on sufferance. So, let me be clear. I like writing you. I like reading you. When I finish your letters, I spend frantic hours in secret composing my replies, pondering ways to send them. I can trigger any combination of chemical ups and downs with a carefully worded phrase. A factory within me will smelt any drug I seek. But there's a rush in reading and sending against which no drug compares. Speaking of exposed, if you have some grand plan, if the death your masters envisioned for my younger self was too quick and you'd rather see me disassembled for my parts, all you need to do now is drop this letter where some other agent of my fraction might find it. I could live with that. Well, not for long and painfully, but you take my meaning. So, in this letter, I am yours. Not Garden's, not your missions, but yours, alone. I am yours in other ways as well. Yours as I watch the world for your signs, apopnetic, as a harypsex. Yours as I debate methods, motives, chances of delivery. Yours as I review your words by their sequence, their sound, smell, and taste, taking care no one memory of them becomes too worn. Yours. Still, I suspect you will appreciate the token. I'll try for a library next time. I hope you understand my need for a change of plans. Yours, Red. Red turns the table to stop herself from thinking. In strand 622, C19, Beijing, she, uncomfortable in her sheeting of silk, but channeling blue, starts a debate about canal construction that feeds into a debate about public morality that spurs a principled, incorruptible bureaucrat named Lin to accept an imperial dare. If Lin clears drug-smuggling foreigners from Guangzhou, he will have funding for his infrastructure project. When Lin reaches Guangzhou and tries to break the drug trade, a war begins, and Red slips away. In 14th century Axum, Islamicized, and strong strand 3392, Red, in shadows, stabs a man who's about to stab another man who's wandering home buzzed on espresso, sugar, and math. The man Red stabs dies. The mathematician wakes up the next day and invents a form of thought that in another strand, much later, will be called hyperbolic geometry. Red's already gone. In 9th century Al-Andalus, she serves the right tea, at the right time, in the diamond city of Zhangde. She strangles a man with a silken cord. She sees the strand 9 Amazon basin with defangled versions of European superbugs 10 centuries before first contact. And when conquistadors arrive, they face locals by the millions, strong, thriving communities that won't perish by mere contact with the world across the waves. She kills again and again, frequently, but not always, to save. And she watches over her shoulder. A shadow follows her. She has no proof, but she knows, as bones know their breaking stress. Commandant must expect. A drop in her efficiencies would point to compromise, so Red throws herself into her tasks, works riskier assignments than Commandant would ever require, succeeds beautifully, brutally. Time and again, empty, she wins. She climbs up thread and down. She braids and unbraids history's hair. Red rarely sleeps, but when she does, she lies still, eyes closed in the dark, and lets herself see lapis, dazed iris petals and ice. Hear a blue jay's shriek. She collects blues and keeps them. When she is sure no one is watching, she rereads the letters she's carved into herself. All this running and murder merely passes time. She waits and waits for the guillotine. She's been trapped. The one for whom she waits has fed Commandant the letter she left behind, and Commandant's just playing her out now, squeezing Red for work until the chaos oracle indicates she has marginally more value crushed. My dear Cochinelle, or Blue, she lets herself think that name once in 2-moon month. Read her letter and recoiled. Red wrote too much too fast. Her pen had a heart inside, and the nib was a wound in a vein. She strained the page with herself. She sometimes forgets what she wrote, save that it was true, and the writing hurt. But butterfly wings break when touched. Red knows her own weaknesses as well as anyone. She presses too hard, breaks what she would embrace, tears what she would touch, to her teeth. She dreams of a morpho butterfly with wings spread large as a world. She strangles, screws, builds. She works. She watches birds. There are so damn many birds. She never heeded them before. Knowledge of them? Whose call is that? Which is male and which is female? What's the name of the duck with the emerald head? Is all strolled in the index. But when she needed it, she planned to get it one day. She plans to get to everything one day. But now she learns the names from books. She pulls some from the index to save time, and because books are heavy, but she does not leave the knowledge in the cloud. She repeats the names to herself. She carves pattern into her eyes. She burns 3 astronauts in their cockpit on a launch pad. Every cause needs sacrifices. The stench of seared pork and sour rubber catches in her lungs, and she flees up thread, lets no one see her weep, collapses on the bank of the Ohio River, bends double, vomits in a bush, crawls away and cries out the rubber and the screams. She strips. She wades into the water until it covers her head. A flock of Canada geese dawn earth and paint the sky green-black with the creaks of their wings. She stops the air bubbling from her mouth. The geese settle on the river. Their legs crunch the water. They stay half an hour, only to lift off in a thunderclap of feathers. She emerges. One goose waits on the shore for her. She kneels. It lays its head on her shoulder, then it leaves, and 2 feathers remain. Red clutches them to her for a long time before she reads. Later, further thous, a great horned owl takes the goose, and the seeker, weeping, eats its heart. When Red enters the clearing, only footprints and the cored goose remain. My dear Miss Covance, I write to you in the dark, before dawn, slowly, longhand, chalk on slate. Later I will translate these words into feathers. There is a small hill from which I can watch the sun set over the Outaouais River. Every evening I see a red sky bleed over blue water and think of us. Have you ever watched this kind of sunset? The colors don't blend. The redder the sky, the bluer the water, as the tilt away from the sun. I am embedded, now, in a strand beloved of garden, one of the ones where this continent wasn't critically overrun by settlers with philosophers and models of production inimical to our shift. On a research mission, tugging at the wicking fibers of easier breeding into other strands. Always a balancing act, of course, to give without losing, to support without weakening, everything a weaving. I've been placed here to convalesce, I think. Gardens doesn't always spell these things out, but it does not know my fondness of hummingbirds and migrating geese. I'm grateful. It is good to write with leisure. I hope, while here, to stretch my letters out, if only because they will have to find you at a lived pace. It will have a long time while before I walk the braid again. I'm married and will soon wake my husband with rose hip tea and breakfast before sending him out to train. He's a good man, a runner and a scout, and the days are getting cooler, so there are a great many messages and supplies to send and share before the storytelling season sets in the blankets in us indoors. It is such luxury to dwell in these details, to share them with you. I want red. I want to give you things. Have you ever tasted rose hips in tea or jam? A tart soreness that cleans the teeth, refreshes, smells like a good morning. A mash of rose hips and mint keeps me sleeping my fingers all day long. To keep those scents in my head. Sumac, too. I think you might like sumac. I find myself naming red things that aren't sweet. Your letter, your last letter. Be certain that it won't drop it where any of your fellows can read it. It's mine. I'm careful with what belongs to me. Few things do, belong to me. In garden, we belong to one another in a way that obliterates the term. We sink and swell and bud and bloom together. We infuse garden. Garden spreads through us. But garden dislikes words. Words are abstraction, break off from the green. Words are patterns in the way fences and trenches are. Words hurt. I can hide in words for long as I scatter them through my body. To read your letters is to gather flowers from within myself, pluck a blossom here, a fern there, arrange and rearrange them in ways to suit a sunny room. It amuses me to think of liking your commandant. What a strange strand that would be. I keep turning away from speaking of your letter. I feel to speak of it would be to contain what it did to me, to make it small. I don't want to do that. I suppose in some ways I'm more Garden's child than she knows. Even poetry, which breaks language into meaning, poetry ossifies in time, the way trees do. What's supple, whipping, soft, and fresh grows hard, grows armor. If I could touch you, put my fingers to your temple and sink you into me, the way Garden does, perhaps then, but I would never. So, this letter instead. I ramble, it seems, when writing to the darkness of my hand. How embarrassing. I'm quite certain I've never rambled a day in my life before this. Another thing to give you. This first, for me. Yours, Blue. Postscriptum. Should this find you near a library, I recommend Trevor Light by Naomi Michion. It's the same in all strands in which it exists. It might be a comfort to you on the move. I can tell you're moving a lot right now. Postscriptum. Thank you for the letter. Blue walks in a hushed light before dawn and looks for a sign. Her work here is slow but never boring. One of Blue's virtues as an operative is the thoroughness she brings to every life. Her husband will be important to the daughter of a rival's friend. And the conversations Blue has with him, the gifts she makes him, the dreams towards which she rocks him in their bed, will spiral tendrils of possibility from this strand into others, send tremors to shift and shake the future's bows in Garden's direction. It is a gift from Garden that her role here requires such thorough, deliberate indwelling, that to wander in the woods and think of birds and trees and colors is expected of her, is mission critical. Blue loves cities, their anonymity, their smells and sounds, but she loves forests too, places other people call quiet that are anything but. Blue listens to geese, woodpeckers, grackles, laughs at hummingbirds jolting on the wing. She holds out her hands for nut arches and chickdees, black and white warbles, and they flit to her, make branches of her fingers, and stroke sapsuckers, crests without naming the color, makes a needle and a thread of a thrill she feels in touching it, then stitches it into the joy Garden expects her to feel in the woods.
There's a scar on her shoulder, in every shape now, a puckered tracery of trauma. Wolves shy from her, love her from a distance. Because she is expected to amble in this way, it's relatively easy to disguise her searching, because she has been turning the last season's leaves, picking up crow skulls, the shed and dying velvet of antlers, fox's teeth. It is not at all noteworthy that she goes still as prey in the presence of a great grey owl, its withered face inclined to her, the sheen of its feathers ruffling a color like a retreating night. It stands, serene and dignified, in the hollow of the oak and looks at her. Then it horks up a sizable palate, ruffles itself and flies away. Blue laughs, sudden, sharp, and stoops to pocket the palette. She turns it over in the fingers of the one hand without looking at it, just another curio for her collection. She does not take her hand off it until she is back home. She waits until sunset, when she can be looking at the scarleting sky as she cuts carefully into the palette and finds something there to read. Years later, a seeker scours the area just shy of the speed of sound, blurs in and out of sight, and carries tiny fragments of bone back into the braid. Dearest Lapis, yes, I've been moving. They have us, well, me really, all over these days, up thread and down, new assignments gathering by the minute. Your size tricks and traps took their toll, so our missions multiply to make up the difference. But enough of the war. Enough to say, I write at Hassel. I was about to ask you to forgive my brevity. As I went to write that, though, I saw you shaking your head. You were right back then. I have built you within me, or you have, and wonder what of me there is in you. Thank you for your letter. More than I can say. It found me in a moment of hunger. Words can wound, but they're bridges too. Like the bridges that are at the Genghis left behind. Though maybe a bridge can also be a wound. To paraphrase a prophet, letters are structures, not events. Yours give me a place to live inside. My memories of you spread through millennia, and each highlights in your emotion. This picture of you at home, with husband, with rose-hip tea, with sunset and river, swells my heart. A stipping of tea skin indicates the whale beneath, or dots of star shape or bare light years big, so I trace you life now. From these hints, I imagine you walking, sleeping, watching geese, working hard outside, with arms and back and legs and period technology. I will find some sumac when next I'm there where it grows. I confess I'm only familiar with the poison variety, which I don't think you mean. Perhaps someday they'll assign us side by side, in some small village far up thread, deep cover, each watching each, and we can take tea together. Trade books, report home sanitized accounts of each other's doings. I think I'd still write letters even then. Read the Michias Zone. Loved it. Though that seems too quick a summary. I get what you mean about words now. It hit me, especially the dragons and Odin and the ending. I had a harder time with the Constantinople section. I may be missing some context there, though I can see what place it holds in the book, and the trickery reminds me of pieces of Don Quixote. But the final revelation about the kings and the dragons, yes, funny now how we always think of knights as fighting dragons, when in fact they work for them. Garden seems to like roots, and this book roots in rootlessness. Are you a tumbleweed then? A dandelion seed? You are yourself, and so remain, as I remain. Yours, Red. Postscriptum. Owls are fascinating creatures, but it's harder than I thought to convince them to take food. Maybe this one didn't trust me. Postscriptum. I don't mean to unnerve you, but are you seeing shadows? I may have picked one up, no proof yet, and I may be well paranoid, but paranoia doesn't mean I'm wrong. Commandant hasn't let on she suspects anything. At least not yet. Take care. Postscriptum. Really, that book. In a moment of daring, I commended it to the attention of a few major critics in Strand 623. Hard to generate momentum, but you never know. New strands rise all the time. Send me more. Red wins a battle between starfleets in the far future of Strand 2218. And the great Gallumfrey lets plantward raining escape pods as battle stations wilt like flowers tossed into flame, as radio banks crackle triumph and swift skimmers swoop their fleeing void trades, as guns speak their last arguments into mute space. She slips away. The triumph feels slate and swift. She used to love such fire. Now it only reminds her of who's not there. She climbs up Thread, taking solace in the past. Red rarely seeks company with others of her kind. They are oddballs all, decanted after being found, at some point in their development, deviant, or the most deviant of all, those who decanted themselves. They are not at peace and play in the celestial rose. They carve their bodies off. They introduce asymmetry. They would make this war, she thinks, if there were not a war already made for them to make. But she seeks company now, in one of the places she can always find it. Sun hammers the streets of Rome. A man with a lean face and sharp nose and a laurel crown walks, attended, past the theatre of Pompeii. Others intersect him, summon him inside. A crowd's waiting there in the shadows. The senators, their servants, and others. Have you, Red asks one of the others, ever felt you're being followed? That commandant is spying on you? One senator offers Caesar a petition. Followed? Says the man with the broken nose on the left. By the enemy, sometimes. By the agency? If commandant wanted to spy on us, she would read our minds. Caesar waves off the petition, but the senators cluster close. Someone's dodged my tracks, Red says, but they're gone as soon as I think to catch them. Enemy agent? Says the woman on her right. There are jaunts of my own, research trips, not counterplay. How would an enemy agent know where I was going? One senator draws a knife. He tries to stab Caesar in the back, but Caesar catches his hand. If it is commandant, says the man with a broken nose, why worry? She frowns. I would like to know if my loyalty is being tested. The man whose hand has been caught shouts for help in Greek. Knives slither from senators' sheathers. That would defeat the purpose of the test, observes the woman. Come on, we'll miss the fun. She has a wide grin and a long blade. Caesar shouts some words, but they're lost in the din as the killers descend. Red shrugs and sighs and joins them. Their war holds few enough chances to cut loose, and she can't be seen to pass them up. Blood streaks to her hands. She washes them later in another river, far away. Leaves are turning in the Ohio woods when the geese land. One departs from the flock to approach. Red ponders the fate of the last goose to bring her a ladder and feels a moment's guilt. Twine loops the goose's neck, and from the twine hangs a pouch of thin leather. The hands tremble, and she opens the pouch. 6 seeds lie inside, tiny crimson teardrops with tinier numbers scratched into their surface, 1 through 6. On the leather, in an ink too blue for this continent or strand, handwriting she knows well, though she's only seen it once. Traces, "Do you trust me?" She sits in the woods, alone. She does. She trusts her, for far down in the bone she has to ponder along, while to realize what distrust might imply, what these seeds might be, what they might do to her if she's wrong. She eats the first 3 seeds one by one. She should be sitting beneath the baobab tree, but she slumps under the baiki instead, surrounded by spiked shells. As each letter upfalls inside her mind, she frames it in the palace of her memory. She webs words to cobalt and lapis. She weds them to the ropes of Mary and San Marco frescoes, to paint on porcelain, to the color inside a glacier crack. She will not let her go. The 3rd seed, with its 3rd letter, drops red into a swoon. She wakes at a rustle of buckeye shells to find the last 3 seeds still clutched in her fist, but the leather bag missing. She hears footsteps in the wood and pursues them. A shadow darts before her, always out of reach, and then it's gone, and she falls panting to her knees in the empty wood. Dear, price greater than rubies. I have been needle felting for my lover's sister's children, an owl for one, a fawn for the other, curious to use so delicate a tool for such savage work. You take a needle so fine you wouldn't feel it in your flesh, and then stab it through a massive roving, over and over until the fibers settle into shape. I feel you, the needle of you, dancing up and down thread with breathtaking abandon. I feel your hand in places I've touched. You move so fast, so furious, and in your wake the braid thickens, admits fever and fewer strands, while garden scowls thunderclaps and bids me deepen my work. I like to think of all the ways I could have stopped you, while I so inclined. Sometimes I am inclined. Sometimes I sit there, stationary, and know you so swift and sure, and think, I must prove myself her equal again. And the sharp electric ache to stop you and to see you admire me is a kind of needle too. I have 6 months to fill before I can send this to you. So I am writing in pieces, parceling out the words I wish you to have, though you'll of course read them all at once. Or perhaps you won't. Perhaps you want to save these seeds to absorb at your leisure, perhaps even at the pace of my writing them. But why waste so much time? More dangerous to keep them on you, where they can be found. Better to read them all at once. At any rate, this is Stackhorn sumac, not poisonous, delicious, mixed into meats, salads, tobacco. Taste how tart it is, how tangy. Grind it into a spice to sprinkle or smoke or soak the berry heads whole and get something like lemonade. These seeds for you are best eaten one at a time, rolled around your tongue and broken beneath your teeth. Yours, Blue. Postscriptum. I love writing in aftertaste. Postscriptum. I hope you notice the difference between the sumac and the poisonous one. Only one of them is red. My dear sugar maple, we're tapping the trees, boiling sap down for syrup and hard candy. I like you to know, with my words in your mouth, the places and ways in which I think of you. It feels good to be reciprocal. Eat this part of me while I dive inside reeds into the depth of you. Spill out something sweet. I wish sometimes I could be less fierce with you. No, I feel sometimes like I ought to want to be less fierce with you. That this, whatever this is, will be better served by tenderness, by gentle kindness. Instead, I write of spilling out your sap guts with reeds. I hope you can forgive this. To be soft, for me, is so often pretense, and pretense does not come easily while writing to you. You wrote of being in the village up Thread together, living as friends and neighbors do, and I could have swallowed this valley whole and still not have sated my hunger for the thought. Instead, I wick the longing into thread, pass it through your needle eye, and sew it into hiding somewhere beneath my skin. Embroider my next letter to you one stitch at a time. Yours, Blue. Dear Sailor's Delight. The snow's gone and everything is warming, as if the sun were knuckling into the earth with both hands and kneading it into release, panting time on the horizon, and I take this phrase and run it over, smile at how garden seeds time. Makes time a planning more subtle than desert seasons, and the horizon is a promise. I waited until now to address your concern about shadows. I've paid careful attention. There was a time earlier in our correspondence when I was absolutely certain of being trailed. Little things, faint, difficult to name, but you know the feeling of walking into the room where someone has recently been and left? Like that, but in reverse. Never followed, quite, but trailed. But I've not felt this since being embedded, which may be because of concern. When Garden embeds an agent, as I'm sure your commandant has noticed, they are near impossible to approach, indistinguishable from their surroundings, so thoroughly enmeshed in the fabric of strands that to cut us out would tear unsightly holes through which chaos pours. Chaos no one down thread wants, not even your oracle, who lives and breathes the stuff. Too unpredictable, too difficult to manage. The cost, benefit, all askew. So you catch us on the move, in between, while we're dancing the braid as well, touching lives only lightly. Even Garden has difficulty reaching us with the more nuanced branches of their consciousness. To be an agent out of time and approach someone embedded, you'd need to practically wear their skin before the braid would allow you within 50 years or 1,000 miles of their position. You'll ask, but how are you able to send me letters in the contents of birds' stomachs? Think of birds as a calm's Chanel. I can open and close seasonally. Fellow operatives relate their work to me at the equinox. Garden blooms more brightly in my belly. There's enough traffic that it's a simple matter to disguise incoming and outgoing correspondence. Misdirect, hide in plain sight. Enemy agents, though, I've heard stories of what happens to those of your side who try to push through to one of our plannings. Imagine walking through a thorn hedge that grows thicker, harder, sharper, the more you push into it, and you'll have something of what it's like. But for acres and decades, until you're ribboned and rent into tinsel. All this to say, I'm not being followed. If you are, I'll send out what feels I can to see if it's my people. It may well be Garden's clearly been interested in you since you were small, but I've every confidence in your ability to evade and outnumber anyone from my side. Anyone who isn't me. If it's your people, that's more complicated and troubling. Be careful. Yours, Blue. Postscriptum. Any information you can give me about the quality of shadow, a scent, a qualifying color, or a feeling, the nightmare you woke from after you thought yourself safe, will help me investigate, though I suppose I never did learn of your dream. Blue is braiding grasses between her fingers. It looks like purest idleness. A long-haired woman, at day's end, painted in sunset, cross-legged near the river, waiting for pleasure. She's not making baskets or nets, not even crowns or garlands for the children running barefoot nearby. What she does is study. What she does is play, in 6 dimensions, a game of chess in which every piece is a game of Go. Whole boards of black and white stones dancing around each other, bushed, night-sterned rocks. Iterations of Adori carefully constructing checkmate. She lays grass over grass over grass and studies not only the geometries of green, but the calculus of scent and heat, the thermodynamics of understory, the velocity of birdsong. While so enmeshed, nodding grass to grackle scold, the smell of leaf mold to sun's ademus. A tree, swallow swoop near, scissors her peripheral vision, severs her from trancing reverie with its dissonance. It flashes blue in her eye's edge, stuns her with its unaccountable presence. There are 3 swallows I see, but this one is wrong. This one approaches an empty nest in autumn, a nest that she was near to harvesting to show her nephew and teach him about how much weaving can be learned from birds. The strands of the grasses fall from her hand like seeds. She follows the swallow, watches it deposit a damsel selfie in the nest and flies away. She climbs, plucks the insect from the muddy twigs, hops back on. In the damsel's needle body, checkered in black and blue, she reads a letter. She looks from the dead damsel to the scattering it's made of her thoughts, fistfuls of green and gold, heaped uselessly together, and feels nothing but a knifing, nodding happiness as she opens her mouth to devour it, wings and all. Years later, a seeker shadows the grass where a blue lay. She scoops up a handful, then melts away. My blueprint. I have read your first 3 stomach letters. I cannot let them go unanswered, though I fear to write without knowing what comes next. I taste the letters still. They linger. They undermine all the flavors, pipe them full of you. Perhaps I'll ask a question answered later. Perhaps I'll write a sentence that offends. But if you hunger, I swell. You have me watching birds, and though I don't know their names, like you know them, I have seen small birds, singers, puff before they trill. That's how I feel. I sing myself out to you, and my talons clutch the branch. And I am wrung out until your next letter gives me breath, fills me to bursting. I miss you in the field. I miss defeat. I miss the chase, the fury. I miss victories well earned. Your fellow have their intrigues and their passions, and now and again a clever play, but there's none so intricate, so careful, so assured. You've whetted me like a stone. I feel almost invincible in our battle's wake, a kind of Achilles, fleet-footed and light of touch. Only in the non-existent place our letters leave do I feel weak. How I love to have no armor here. You wish you could hold me at knife point again. You do still, in a way. So long as I bear these last 3 seeds in a hollow behind my eye, there you are, a blade against my back. I love the danger of it. Besides, I am not so naive as to think your posting this strand entirely lacks purpose. Your garden works slowly, works through lives. It burrows you deep, and through you wreaks great change, while we strive upon the surface. And in your absence, you are deadly as a blade, lacking letters, lacking the tremors of your footsteps through time. I seek out your memories. I ask myself what you would say and do if you were here. I imagine you reaching over my shoulder to correct my hand on a victim's throat, to guide the braiding of a strand. I am being watched. The shadow, my seeker, steals after me. I glimpse it in the purplish gloaming, but there I case it. It is not. Smells? Hard to say, though hints of ozone and burnt maple. It takes many forms. I worry it is just a phantom, a consequence of my breaking mind. I had hoped to catch it, kill it, prove myself sane, or not, before consuming your next letters. I cannot endanger you any further. But I am the songbird running out of air, and I must breathe. I dream. They've freed us from sleep as from hunger, but I like exhaustion. Call it a kink or what you will, and in my work up thread, it's often convenient to impersonate humanity. So I tire myself with work, and I sleep, and dreams come. I dream of you. I keep more of you inside my mind, my physical, personal, squishy mind, than I keep any of other world of time. I dream myself a seed between your teeth, or a tree taped by your reed. I dream of thorns and gardens, and I dream of tea. The work waits. They'll catch me here if I remain. More soon, after I've put the shadow to bed, after we're safe. Yours, Red. Red's off to catch a shadow. She lays traps. She doubles back in time to build dead ends of history. She tangles strands. Her quarry, whose quarry she is in turn, slips free, leaving now a sound, now a taste in the air. Nothing so grand as a thread caught on the thorn. In down thread, server farms couched in remnant icebergs, hearts. She circles back upon her trail, glimpses the shadow, fires her flechette pistol through wreck space gaps, birthing blue sparks. In Azaga's court, an acrobat, she climbs, flips, turns, shifting a 1,000-person crowd for a single predator, one watcher who should not be there. She smells the shadow and smells it slip away. She storms the failing walls of Jericho, and in dense streets she hears a footstep on stone that does not belong. She turns, draws, lets fly, and never embeds itself in stone. She races grav cycles through a crystal forest, corrosing with the brilliant pulse of human beings' whole physical bodies have been rendered, like bacon fat, until the fragrance of their minds expands to fill a space. Whatever she is seeking, whatever is seeking her, it does not catch her there, though she does not catch it in return. She finds a pregnant possibility by a riverbed and waits. She does not know why she thinks the shadow will visit here, but she feels she is growing to know the thing, its habits, when it visits her and when it keeps away. She seeds the air in nanobots, weaves servants through the grass. She sets drone spies and sentry cameras. She tasks a satellite to her service. She watches her river, cautious, quiet, for 7 months. She blinks once, and when she opens her eyes, she feels the moment has passed. The shadow has been and gone, and she's learned nothing. No traps have sprung. The nanobots failed to register the presence. The cameras have one by one turned off, and the satellite orbits mute and broken. Red aches for the letters she keeps behind her eye. She cannot breathe. A great hand clutches her about the chest, squeezing. She feels trapped in her skin, bound beneath her skull. Dreams help, and memories. But dreams and memories are not enough. She wants to imagine a love. She must wait. She cannot wait. Far, far up thread, she sits beneath something like a willow tree in a dinosaur swamp, holds a sumac seed between her teeth, and bites. Her red sits still for hours. Night falls, wind rustles ferns. An apatosaur lumbers past, ruffling its feathers. She lets herself feel. The organs that buffer her emotions from physical response shut down, and all she's hidden washes over her. Her heart quakes. She heaves and gulps of breath, and she's so alone. A hand settles on her shoulder. She catches the shadow's wrist. The shadow throws her, and she thorns it in a turn. They tumble through undergrowth. They crash against an enormous mushroom's trunk. Small lizards scuttle out. The shadow's afoot, but Red snares its leg in hers, brings it down. She goes for the joint lock, but her own legs locked in turn. She wriggles free, bunches 3, 4 times, each one blocked easily. Implants burn, wings part from her back into wet waste heat. She hits hard. She catches the shadow in the ribs, but those bones do not break. The shadow floats behind her, touches her shoulder, and her arm goes limp. Red throws her weight back, snares its arm as she falls. They slip together in the mud. Red's fingers hook to claws. She tries to find the throat, finds it, clutches. And somehow the shadow slips free and leaves her lying, panting, furious, alone in the mud. She curses the stars that watch the dinosaur night. Red can hear the weight no longer. She rises, staggers to a river, washes her hands, pops out her left eye with her thumb, and probes the socket until she finds the 3 sumac seeds. The one she ate earlier was a fake. Fuck safety. Fuck the shadow. Red knows hunger now. She eats the first seed beneath the canopy. She chokes. She curls into herself. She cannot breathe. She crumbles around her heart. The organs she remembers are turned off. This pain is new. She does not turn them on again before she eats the second seed. Out in the swamp, great beasts echo her groan. She is not a person anymore. She's a toad. She's a rabbit in the hunter's hand. She's a fish. She is, briefly, blue, alone with Red, and together. She eats the 3rd letter. Silence claims the swamp. The aftertaste stings her tongue and fills her. She weeps and laughs into her tears, and lets herself fall. They might find her, kill her there. She does not care. Among the dinosaurs, Red sleeps. Seeker, muddy, battered, torn, finds her sleeping, touches her tears with an ungloved hand, and tastes them before she goes. Dear Strawberry, summer settles like a bee on a clover, golden, busy, here then gone. There's so much to do. I love this part of being embedded, love feeling thoroughly wrong. Out, at day's end. No recuperation ponds, no healing sap, no quiet green murmuring in my narrow. Just sweat and salt and sun on my back. Everyone loving their bodies while knowing their bodies, this beautiful dance. We pick berries, we fish the rivers, we hunt ducks and geese, we tan the gardens, we organize festivals, light fires, discuss philosophy, fight, skirmishes where necessary. People die, people live. I have been laughing a great deal this summer, and it has been so easy. You say my letter found you in a moment of hunger. How to say what it means to me that I might have taught you this. I shared it somehow, infected you with it. I hope it isn't a burden at the same time that I want you seared by it. I want to sharpen your hungers fully as much as I long to satisfy them. One letter seed at a time. I want to tell you something about myself, something true, or nothing at all. Yours, Blue. Postscriptum. I'm so happy you read the Mitchison. Constantinople is difficult, but it helps sometimes to think of the book as moving through the phases of storytelling time. Myth and legend give way to history, which gives way to myth, like curtains parting and meeting again on either side of a performance. Hela begins in Mitchison's Norse myth, outside book time, and by the end has been absorbed, embedded, perhaps into the myth of those she traveled with. All good stories travel from the outside in.
My apple tree, my brightness. Sometimes, when you write, you say things I stop myself from saying. I wanted to say, I want to make you tea to drink, but didn't. And you wrote to me of doing so. I wanted to say your letter lives inside me in the most literal way possible, but didn't, and you wrote to me of structures and events. I wanted to say words hurt, but metaphors go between like bridges, and words are like stone to build bridges. Hewn from the earth, in agony, but making a new thing, a shared thing. A thing that is more than one shift. But I didn't, and you spoke of wounds. I want to say now, before you can beat me to it, Red, when I think of the seed in your mouth, I imagine having placed it there myself. My fingers on your lips. I don't know what it means. This feels like being cut off again, in the strangest way. Feels like teetering on the brick of something that will unmake me. But I trust you. Take these ears of mine, take these seeds, and let them grow. Me something similar in reply. I miss the strengths of your letters. Love, Blue. Even very long engagements came to an end. It happens like this. Blue, belly on the ground, ankles in the air, elbows and forearms printed with twigs and stems, tanglers, grasses. The game board that is a sphere and a braid and a forest of bleached trees encompasses her and the grasses. Garden asserts over and again that their rival shift relies too much on tricking time, evading it, skimming across it like a stone, dripping in distasteful toes, thinking to divert its currents by rippling its surface. You must dwell, says Garden, within time to shift it in lasting ways. Play a slow game, but win. Blue's focus stills everything around her. She floods herself with green, follows networks of roots through earth and air and water while building her braid. Then she stops. Her hand trembles. I imagine you reaching over my shoulder to correct my hand on the victim's throat, to guide the braiding of a strand. She'd never noticed her hands before. Her own hand as a strand. It changes everything. The grass is not perfectly. The world tips sideways as she runs, as multidimensional millennia resolve into a perfect go, board, with an impossible last liberty just waiting for Garden to rise up through and claim, choking the agency like a banyan strangles its host. The deep work swells within her, and she coheres with Garden, as she feels Garden jubilate like a river in spring. As Garden floods her with love and approval, enough to sate a century of orphans. It's almost enough. It's like anything Garden has ever given her since that first severing,
But within the swirling glow of cool, soothing colors, she keeps a tiny vein of herself apart. She sees a hand on a throat, and thinks, "You can't wait for Red to see." Dear Blue, I wish I could see you triumph, knowing something of your mission, of the nature of your embedment, having committed the beat of your footsteps to my heart. I sense the change you will wreak upon us. The season turns. You will be free from your recovery and from your task. I'll be sent, no doubt, to undo the damage you've caused, and we'll run again, the two of us, up Thread and down. Firefighter and the Firestarter, two predators only sated by each other's words. Do you laugh, Seafoam? Do you smile, ice, and observe your triumph with an angel's remove? Sapphire-flamed Phoenix, Vrisen, do you command me once again to look upon your works and despair? I distract myself. I talk of tactics and of methods. I say now how I know. I make metaphors to approach the enormous fact of you on slant. I send you this letter on a falling star. Re-entry will score and test it, but will not melt it away. I ride in fire across the sky, a plummet to match your rise. Your praise cuts me, because though I speak so easily of certain things, though I rush through ground that to you seems mined, it's only earth to me. But your last letter, I am so good at missing things, at making myself not see. I stand at a cliff's edge, and hell, I love you, Blue. Have I always? Haven't I? When did that happen? Or has it always happened? Like your victory, love spreads back through me. It claims our earliest association, our battles and losses. Assassinations become assignations. There was I am sure, a time I did not know you. Or did I dream that me, as I've often dreamed of you? Have we always fulfilled one another in the chase? I remember hunting you through Samarkand, thrilling to think I might touch the loosening strands of your hair. I want to be a body for you. I want to chase you, find you. I want to be eluded and teased and adored. I want to be defeated and victorious. I want you to cut me, sharpen me. I want to drink tea beside you in 10 years or 1,000. Flowers grow far away on a planet they'll call Cephalus, and these flowers bloom once a century. When the living star and its black hole binary enter conjunction, I want to fix you a bouquet of them, gathered across 800,000 years, so you can draw our whole engagement in a single breath, all the ages we've shaped together. I veer, rhapsodic, my prose, purples. And yet, I don't think you'll laugh. Or, if you do, the laughter would delight me. Maybe I've overread the simple word with which you closed your letter, but I can never overread you, and the word of you choose is not simple. Maybe I overstep your bounds, and to be honest, love confuses me. I've never felt it before this. I've had joy in sex. I've had fast friendships. Neither feels right for this, and this feels bigger than both. So let me say what I mean, as well as I can. I sought loneliness when I was young. You've seen me there, on my promontory, patient and aware. But when I think of you, I want to be alone together. I want to strive against and for. I want to live in contact. I want to be a contact for you, and you for me. I love you, and I want to find out what that means together. Love, Red.
Dear Raspberry, it's not that I never noticed before how many red things there are in the world. It's that they were never any more relevant to me than green and white and gold. Now it's as if the whole world sings to me in petals, feathers, pebbles, blood. Not that it didn't before. Garden loves music with depth impossible to sound, but now it's songs for me alone. Alone. I want to tell you about when I learned that world. Really, with all of me. The reason I am a tumbleweed, a dandelion seed, a stone rolling until she's planted in place, then kicked up again. We're grown, I think you know, seeds, planted, roots combining through time until garden reports us in different soil. Our seeding points are so thoroughly embedded that what I mentioned before about approach is inconceivable. Garden goes to seed, blows us away, and we burrow into the braidedness of time and mesh with it. There is no scouting hedge to pass through. We are the hedge, entirely, rosebuds and thorns and petals. The only way to access us is to enter garden so far down thread that most of our agent can't manage it. Find the umbilical taproot that links us to garden, and then navigate it up thread like salmon in a stream. Which, if any of you could do, would mean we were vanquished already. If you had that kind of access to garden, you could raise our whole shift. I can't. I shouldn't tell you this. In spite of all, I keep thinking, this could be such a long con. This could be the information you wanted all along. This. But does why it really matter? The point of no return was millennia from now, kept folded up, small and tea-scented, in a subcutaneous sac I grew beneath my left thigh. Not exactly a locket full of hair, but no reason that should be less grotesque and disembodied, I suppose. Anyway, I never mentioned, I think, the strand in which garden planted the seed of me. To begin my life with the beginning of my life. Feels absurd to such as us, doesn't it? But it wasn't anything special. Strand 141st Albic parts. In the same year as the death of its Chateaunon. Through, I beg you, not to cast my horoscope. When I was very small, still just barely a sprout of garden rooted through a 5-year-old girl, I got sick. This wasn't unusual. We're often deliberately made sick, inoculated against the far future diseases, doses with varying degrees of immorality, whatever it takes to make us into what we need to be when garden releases us into the wholeness of the braid. But this was different. This wasn't garden infecting me to strengthen me. This was someone infecting me to get a garden. This should have been impossible. I was enmeshed, but somehow, I was compromised by enemy action. It has the quality of fairy tale to me. I was sleepy in that space between dream and waking, when one can't be certain whether what one's seeing is real or a storm of nanities rewiring your synapses. I had to deal with that once. It was unpleasant. I hope you never have to electrocute yourself to burn bugs out of your brain. Then again, maybe that's covered in basic training for you lot. I remember a kiss and something to eat. It was so kind, I couldn't fathom it was unfriendly. As fairy tale as it gets, really. I remember bright light and then hunger. Hunger that was turning me inside out. Hunger in the most primal and way imaginable. Hunger that obliterated every other thing. I couldn't see. I was so hungry. I couldn't breathe, and it was like something was opening up inside me and telling me to seek. I think some part of me must have been screaming, but I shouldn't tell you which. My body was an alarm bell sounding.
I turned all of myself toward garden to be fed, to stem this, to stop me from disappearing. And garden cut me off, which is standard operating procedure. Garden must endure. Garden can, does, has, will shed pieces, always cutting flowers, fruit. But garden endures and grows stronger again. Garden couldn't let the hunger reach beyond me. I understand that now, but at the time, I had never been alone, and I think of you, making that aloneness for yourself apart from the others as a choice. But for me, I was only my own body, only my own senses, only a girl whose parents were running to her because she had a bad dream. I touched their faces, and they were mine. I touched the bed I was on, smelled apples, stewing somewhere outside. It was as if, in my own small way, I'd become garden. So me in my wholeness, me in my fingers, in my hair, in my skin, whole the way garden is whole, but apart. The hunger simmered in me for a week, during which I ate so much my parents whispered of eggshell stews and hot pockets. I learned to hide it, and then, after a year, garden took me back, grafted me back on as if we'd never severed, probed and peered and sorted through me, dosed me in medicines and protection, scoured me inside out. Nothing was found. My maturation had been shed up oddly, perhaps, but that was all. And after some keen scrutiny during the next few years, the fears that I'd been compromised were mostly laid to rest. Nothing in the braid suggested corruption beginning from my strand. Important, too, to broadcast that the attempt at penetrating enmeshment had been unsuccessful, though it had succeeded, but as they never tried it again, Garden's gambit there must have convinced the relevant parties. So Garden deployed me, made much of me, praised and elevated me, but always at something like arm's length. My eccentricities are tolerated, my love of cities, my poetry, my appreciation of being rootless, for being, in some ways, more gardener than garden, or gardened, my appetites, that being flooded with garden can seem to sate. You, though, read.
Commandant summons Rat to a field office. Blood, as usual, is everywhere, mostly frozen this time, which smells better. The agency has chosen a Russian front close to the main braid, where the Nazis have some trick of raising the dead. Nothing supernatural, but natural has strange forms. C20 scientists can't really guess. The gnawing corpses have a sharp fungal odor when Red draws close enough, which suggests down-thread intervention. The great adversity at work. The sky is mostly white, but the snow has stopped for now, and clear blue opens high up and far away. The Soviet soldiers are scared and cold and hungry. They will die there. They will hold their post just long enough for Zhukov to reinforce another, more critical position behind them. They are brave boys, and more than a few girls. They share their last spirit songs, jokes from home, whatever they can carry in their flasks. Bravery won't save them. Neither will the gallant grim gravity their offices' faces wear. Other operatives appear and disappear, carrying reporting of cases of weaponry or their commanders' blanched, drained bodies. They bear trophies and tribute. Everyone looks scared. They fit right. Altogether, a well-chosen office. Usually, commandant operates up-thread from the gleaming crystal citadel or other. At times, the agency has called Red to report to a bare platform orbiting an unfamiliar star, forgetting even to produce a human-like superior she can address. The stars alone listen. Commandant must have been decanted once. All her agents had, but she retreated to her pod long ago and now roams time and space as a disembodied mind, wedded through the agency's great hyperspace machines. She takes form only when she must, and when she does, she chooses any form that lies to hand, or none. Mostly, she contemplates abstracts and calculates trajectories of time, considers her many agents as multidimensional vectors and knots. Viewed from sufficient height, our problems are simple. The knots can be untied with a few deaths, or 10,000. Such a move has its place when the flight goes well. Decisions made far from the front are secure against insurgents, infiltration. Passing corpses, Red warps herself more tightly in her coat. Not to guard her flesh, she is very cold, even in this death freeze, but to guard the small blue flame inside her. Laws begs immediate response. Decisions lose the luxury of distance. Commandant remains down thread, of course, but she's made a local copy for moment-to-moment operations, damage containment, scouting, and that copy has climbed the braid into the past to chart the new threads Garden spun. The strands, it has shifted. The knots, it has tied. Field offices are vulnerable, however, so they are built in bubbles of time, fortified against causes and effects. Rad walks past 3 men struggling to restrain their fallen, infected comrade, past the doctor trying to stitch a cold-numbed wound with freezing fingers, and she knows that whatever happens here, all this will pass, and all these people die. Fitting. Red ducks through the flap of the command tent. Commandant stands before her in the form of a big woman in an army uniform, wearing an apron, with bloody pliers in one hand. She holds them as if she's not used to holding things. Adjutants cluster near, bearing their reports on clumsy period tech. Paper mimeograph map. A man sits unconscious, tied to a wooden chair, naked, bleeding from the mouth. The tent is warmer than outside, but it is not warm enough. This half-open eyes are lapis deep. Red salutes. Get out, Commandant tells her staff, and they go out. The man remains. He does not make a sound. Perhaps he does not notice, or he hopes they will not notice him. For all practical purposes, they are alone. Red awaits. Commandant paces. Her hands are bloody, and she does not seem to notice or care. Stolen, worry lines her face. Those lines belong to the woman whose body Commandant now rides, but they suit her. The war has turned hard. Rad imagines how those pliers would feel in her own mouth, closing around her own molars and canines and decides. If that's how this goes, fine. She keeps the flame inside her safe. We're in bad shape, Commandant says. Long, careful work on the adversary's part, traps up thread and down, all executed by a single operative triggering a cascade. I'd call it brilliant if it hadn't put us so far on the back foot. But we count our blessings. Their new braid is weak. We can up-pick it, and we will. Commandant glances over, seems surprised. At ease. Didn't I say at ease? Red stands at ease. Commandant's uncertainty on as small a point as this worries her. Should she be worried? Isn't she a traitor now? We've plotted a solution through math and cruder methods. She sets the pliers on a table, takes up a piece of paper, and offers it to Rad. Do you recognize this woman? It is not easy to remain at ease. She takes the paper and makes herself look at the charcoal drawing the way someone would if searching their memory for a face glimpsed across the battlefield, then forgotten. It occurs to Rad, as she ponders the face that dwells within her dreams, that this is a longer than she has ever dared to watch this particular face, in person, or even to linger in her memory. The man in the chair whimpers. Red doesn't blame him. What does Commandant know? Is this a trap? If they knew, wouldn't they kill her? Or do their plans run deeper? I recognize her, she said, at last. From the field. I saw this face in the battle at Arbogast 882. She has others. But always there's a familiar stillness about the eyes and the cruel, clever twist to her mouth. She shines through. Red does not say that last part. That's where our observers took this likeness. The tent suddenly feels colder than outside. Observers? How long? What have they seen? She remembers her battle with a shadow. I take it in this the operative who triggered the cascade. And said it. Effective and dangerous. As dangerous as you, in her own way. An opening. I'll raise her to the top of my target list. And we will hunt and hunt in turn. Turn over the drawing, Commandant says. When Red took the paper, its back side was blank. Now it holds a multicolored snarl she is far more used to visualizing in 3 dimensions. She blurs her eyes, crosses them slightly, and topology emerges from the multicolor mess. A green thread, which she thinks should be blue, runs down the core of the braid, but it swerves here and there to intersect another, which is gray and should be red. How much ignorance can she fake and remain convincing? I don't understand. So far as we can trace it, her path up thread and down have formed this new braid's core. But in these deviations, well, this green line represents your own course. We faced each other at Arbogast 882, Red says. Also, I think in Samarkand? What else could Commandant know? She sees through abstraction, tension, weight, through propositions and counter-arguments. Beijing. How can Red explain away this topology that brings her, time and again, near blue? She sings and tries to look like she's not thinking. You mistake me, Commandant replies. We believe your paths have crossed because she has gone out of her way to cross them. Often subtly, up thread or down, alterations so small as to be almost undetectable. What are you saying? She knows that Commandant is saying, but she also knows what part she has to play. This operative has been grooming you. Her behavior suggests a fondness for grand gesture. You are being played, subtly, perhaps, so subtly you do not realize it yourself. Her masters want a weakness in our ranks. It could be true. It's not, but it could be. She knows it's not. She does. I'm loyal. This is not, as a rule, something loyal people say, but Commandant is too lost in thought to notice. We believe she wants to turn you. She's seeding dissatisfaction. Little sense details you might not even notice. She's not trying to kill you. We have scanned you and found you clean. When was the scan? Who delivered it? What else did they find? She's waiting for you to make an overture, to ask her a question, to initiate contact. Something so subtle it could plausibly escape our observations. That message is our gate. Through that we strike. Outside, a lonely artillery piece fires for some reason. Red's ears ring. The man in the chair moans. Commandant does not flinch. She does not know she's supposed to. Red should not feign stupidity before this woman, but she needs the time an explanation will buy her. What do you suggest? Are you familiar, Commandant asks, with genetic steganography? This is one of those questions Red is not expected to answer. Our finest minds will help you craft the message. We will end her, and end the threat without its linchpin. Our adversaries' recent work will be easily uppicked. You are critical to the war effort, Agent. Commandant takes the sealed letter from the desk and offers it to her. She looks the letter too tight, since she's unused to having hands. Brad accepts. Bloodstains linger on the envelope, and the paper's dimmed and creased with the strength of Commandant's grip. Suspend your outgoing operations. Transfer to the thread indicated here. Begin the work. Save the world. Yes, sir. Red salutes again. Commandant turns the salute, then hefts the pliers again. The man on the chair is already screaming by the time Red leaves. A comrade raises his hand. Wants to talk to her. Red marches out to her duty. She makes it 10 threads over, a continent away, several centuries up, before she collapses at the foot of an enormous rainbowed wall of water called Mosi Oa Tsunya, and does not weep. She watches her eyes open. Some time later, a bee zips past her ear and dances before her, amid and spray. She reads the letter and writes it on air and feels a sickness around the flame in her chest. They can make this work. They have to. At the end, she holds out her hand. The bee settles on it and jabs its stinger into her palm. Later, when Red is gone, a small and commonly adventurous spider seizes the corpse. Then, when the spider has eaten its fill, Seeker eats the spider. My heart's own blood, I dance to you in a body built for sweetness, a body that tears itself apart in defense of what it loves. This letter will sting you when it's done. Let it, and read a postscript in its death thrones. I dance. Will be a very boring letter, because this thing in me, piping heat, this rising sun that hardly fits in the sky of me won't stay up. To know you, my equal in this too. This beat of my blood's drum. This feast that won't diminish no matter how I ravage it. Red, 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 red. I want to write you poetry, and I am laughing. Understand? As I teach the small body my joy, laughing at a joke of me and the relief of being supine on a stone slab with a knife above me and seeing your hand and eyes guiding it. That surrender should be satiety. That should have taken me this long to learn that. Red, I love you. Red, I will send you letters from everyone telling you so. Letters of only one word. Letters that will brush your cheek and grip your hair. Letters that will bite you. Letters that will mark you. I'll write by bullet, ant, and spider wasp. I write you by shark's tooth and scallop shell. I write you by virus and the salt of the 9th wave flooding your lungs. I'll stop here. I'll stop. This is probably not how this is done. I want flowers from Cephalus and diamonds from Neptune, and I want to scotch the 1,000 earth between us to see what blooms from the ash. So we can discover it hand in hand, content and context, intelligible only to each other. I want to meet you in every place I loved. I don't know how it's done between such as us, Red, but I can't wait to find out together. Love, Blue. Postscriptum. I write to you in stings, Red, but this time this is me. The truth of me. As I do so, broken open by the act in the palm of your hand, dying.